All right, everybody, what is going on? Hope you guys are doing well, and we're going to have a little bit more fun in this video. We're still talking about division rivals, and we're doing so in unflattering terms for no other reason than that as Seahawks fans, it amuses us, I guess. So, yeah, we're talking about the 49ers. I already made a video earlier talking about the Rams and their draft class and why it looks like it's a pretty bad class and why I don't think it's going to help them accomplish their goals. So now let's do the same with the 49ers. They had a draft class that is also largely considered to be pretty bad. And I don't think it's as bad as the Rams, but it does have some of the same seeds. And ultimately, I do think it's pretty bad. So let's talk about it. This video is sponsored by Prize Picks. More on them a little bit later. But yeah, the 49ers draft class, let's be real about something here. Let's keep something in mind. The 49ers are kind of all in to win right now as well. Same as the Rams. The 49ers are reliant on several aging players that have very little time in this league left. Trent Williams, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, that is most of their offense. And Mike Evans now you can add to the pile, by the way. He's not going to last forever. That's a big chunk of what makes that offense go. Now, Fred Warner and Nick Bosa aren't super old, but what they are is injury prone. Well, okay, Fred Warner isn't, Bosa kind of is. They're starting to wear down, though. I don't think they're going to be able to be the players that they are right now forever. So Bosa and Warner, they're getting to the point where you have to start asking questions a little bit. So this 49ers team, like the Rams, needs to do what they can to make this 2026 season as good as possible. They are another team that is like, if we don't win the Super Bowl this year, we're going to be losing a lot in the very near future here. Kittle, Williams, McCaffrey, maybe Evans. I know they gave Evans a multi-year deal, but what if he isn't good? What if he breaks down? So the Niners are in a similar spot to the Rams. The only difference is the Rams got very, very close to the Super Bowl last year. The 49ers, maybe they would have gotten close if they had stayed healthy. We don't know. But as it stands, they got completely demolished in the divisional round. It's a little different. But if they didn't want the pressure of going for it this year, we should have seen them do things differently this offseason. They should have been looking to get rid of Trent Williams, maybe getting rid of Christian McCaffrey, maybe starting to really refresh the roster, not signing a guy like a Mike Evans who has limited time in this league left. So to me, they are in the same spot. Now, going through their draft, and I got this page pulled up here, you can see they made 8 picks, and unlike the Rams, I don't think everything they did was bad. And unlike the Rams, I think you could at least make the argument that they actually got some guys here that are going to help them. But are they moving the needle? That's the question here. They need needle movers because not only are they a team with holes, they're a team that has shown they usually don't make it to the end of the season clean. They deal with injuries. So let's talk about these guys starting with their first pick, Deshaun Stribling, the wide receiver. This was a very interesting pick. They traded down a couple times to get to 33, which was good. I think they did a pretty good job there. But then they get Deshaun Stribling of Ole Miss. If you like sports, the best way to make them better and more exciting is using Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. Prize Picks, all you got to do is pick more or less on your favorite players' projections and build lineups with a few taps. It's the daily fantasy stuff, but it's made super easy over there. Whatever sport you're into, give it a shot. And right now, Prize Picks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All you have to do is use promo code HMA. I've had a great time on Prize Picks so far. It makes this daily fantasy thing very easy, and it makes watching the games way more exciting. Be sure to check out the social feeds feature so you can share lineups with your friends and tail partners or even fade their picks. Right now, Prize Picks is offering odds on the NFL draft. You have who's going to go where, what each team is going to do, how many of each position is going to go in each round, and so on and so on. Get on over to Prize Picks. Take advantage of that. So download Prize Picks today, America's #1 sports app, and remember to use the promo code HMA. And remember, always gamble responsibly. Now, I'll say this much. I actually kind of like Stribling. I evaluated him before the draft, and I found him to be a viable vertical threat receiver with good speed, who does actually have pretty good ball skills and something of a willingness to play aggressively. There is stuff about Stribling that stands out positively, and I think that he is kind of what the 49ers needed. So I don't think this is just a terrible pick. I do, however, think it's pretty terrible to spend the first pick in the second round on a guy who was probably going to be there on day 3. I imagine that Stribling would have been there as late as even the 5th round. I believe the big board aggregate did have him around that range. He was a late riser, but there is no universe where Stribling needs to be going 33rd overall. So, is Stribling going to help them in 2026 is the next question. I'm not I'm not so sure. I think he has a little bit of an uphill battle at this point. Mike Evans is brought in. You've got Ricky Pearsall, and then you've got Christian Kirk. Can Stribling beat out Kirk? Maybe. But Kirk is kind of just a slot guy anyway, so they don't really compete for the same snaps. They just compete for targets, I guess you could say. And Mike Evans, you spent all that money on him. Obviously, you're looking at him to be an important part of this offense. Ricky Pearsall, I mean, maybe. It seems like Pearsall can do some stuff when he's out there. I know you're kind of expecting him to just get hurt again. And that's where having a guy like Stribling is nice. But if you really needed a wide receiver, then there are other wide receivers you could have gotten that I think would have been better value. And again, bottom line is, if you want Stribling so much, you can get him later. You can be pretty darn confident that he's not going to be gone middle of the second. You can get him in the third at least, probably the fourth. There's a better way to do business here. So can Stribling play for the Niners in 2026? Yeah, I think so. Is he moving the needle? Is he actually helping them? You could talk me into it being a little bit, but I would feel much more optimistic about them getting another receiver, one of many other receivers that were available at the 33rd overall pick. So it's not a complete disaster, but it's bad process. And then the next pick, Romello Height. Now, this one I actually think is okay. I had Height in about the late third, early fourth, so getting him at 70 is okay. Romello Height is a very specific kind of player. He is a pure speed rusher. He's sub 240 pounds. He's very small, undersized, gets pushed around against the run, but his dip, his bend, his first step quickness, and his speed create problems for offensive lines. And the Niners needed pass rushers, so I understand it. Now, here's the thing, and look, there's not much you can do about this. You do eventually need to draft edge rushers, and you need to develop them, but what is it that we always talk about with edge rushers in the NFL? They need that first year. They need that first season to learn. And that first season, they don't do that much because they're learning. So is Romello Height going to do a lot for the 49ers down the line? I think he can. I think he's got some things about him that are positive. By the way, he's not actually 214 pounds. No, he weighed in at like 239 at the combine. Just saying. But anyway, he is a good player. But is he going to be good for them in 2026? The odds are very much against it. And I mean, you take a look at their depth chart. Edge rusher, they've got Bosa, they got Michael Williams. Those are their guys. So the opportunities for Romello Height to be a positive net impact on the team in 2026 are kind of low in my mind. Even though I don't think it's a bad pick, again, are these guys helping you? I think that Height could help a little bit, but I don't think he would help you more than even like a very low-level veteran signing. Then you have Kaelon Black, and I kind of feel like I'm similar here. My thoughts on this pick are somewhat similar to my thoughts on Stribling. I don't think Black is a bad player, and I understand they wanted a running back that was a scheme fit, but Black was probably overdrafted by at least one full round. So Black is probably a guy who should have gone in the late fourth at the earliest. The Niners got him in the late third because they didn't want to miss on him. And look, I'm not saying Black is a bad player. He did have 1,000 yards last year for the national champions. He was reasonably productive 2 years prior at James Madison. He can play. He can play. He's not a big third down guy, but he does run with a little bit of a ferocious nature. He does run with willingness for playing through physical contact, and he is a capable back. But you reached. Now, can he help the team win in 2026? This one I think is at least arguable because Christian McCaffrey, he's got to be breaking down. In fact, he kind of is breaking down. We saw it in 2025. By the end of the year, he was not an effective running back at all. He was just a receiver. And the Niners needed a running back. Now, the thing is, and this is where reputation kind of comes into play here, the Niners draft running backs a lot, and then the running backs they draft don't do anything, and then they end up getting much better play out of guys they didn't even pick, guys who they get in undrafted rookie free agency, or guys they pick up off a scrap heap. So Kaelon Black needs to buck that trend, and I think he can, but it's an overdraft. It's an overdraft on a player that, yeah, he can play for the team a little bit, he can help them, but is he better than even Brian Robinson Jr. would have been if you had brought Robinson back? He'll be cheaper, but is that helping you win? I don't know. I don't think so. Going beyond that, you get into day 3 here. And day 3, I actually think most of what the Niners did is fine. Like Grayson Halton, that's a pretty good pick. I like Grayson Halton well enough. And even if he doesn't make an immediate impact, and he could, by the way, the interior line for the Niners, not really a lot of stud power here. There's really not a lot going on here that you're super excited about, although they did get Odigizua, which I did think was a pretty good trade. But not that this is a condemnation of him, but Grayson Halton probably not really moving the needle for you in 2026. So take that as you will. Carver Willis, that one's a little bit more interesting to me because it's possible that Carver Willis ends up playing left guard in the NFL. And if Carver Willis ends up playing left guard, that's actually a little interesting because as a tackle, I think he's a mess. And I've watched him play for a couple of years there at Washington, of course, because he well, only the 1 year actually, now that I think about it, but I don't think he can play tackle at the NFL level. He was good in college at it. I don't think he has what it takes to be good in the NFL. However, if you move him to guard, you might have something. But the thing is, he never played a guard in college outside of 2 snaps. I'll move my head real quick there so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's kind of interesting because the starting left guard for the 49ers right now is Robert Jones. I doubt they're married to him. And the Niners do have offensive line issues that Carver Willis might be able to do something about. Now, if they're looking at Carver Willis as a tackle, then he's behind Trent Williams. And I don't know how he gets on the field. I don't know how he helps. But I have a very hard time believing that's the case because they signed Vidarian Lowe in the offseason. That's got to be their backup tackle. And I imagine Willis is going to swing inside to guard. Ephesians Prysock, another Washington Husky player. And hey, Prysock brings some nice things to the table. I don't think this was a bad pick either. But is he going to help the team in 2026? Almost certainly not. Is he getting on the field over guys like Lenore or Stout or Renardo Green or even Nate Hobbs or Jack Jones? I guess they signed in the offseason, maybe him. But you look at the cornerbacks they have. I know it's not an amazing group of corners. It is, however, a group that I don't think Prysock's going to be able to crack as a rookie, so I doubt he gets on the field. Jaden Duggar, linebacker, I don't really know too much about him, another 4th-round pick. And the Niners are so thin at linebacker, there is actually kind of a pathway to him getting on the field, but for the moment, Greenlaw and Warner are in place there. If they stay upright, it's clearly their job. They're not going anywhere. So even if Duggar ends up being like the 1st or 2nd linebacker off the bench, then his ability to impact things positively is pretty limited. I don't think he'll be better than what they got out of Kendricks last year. Kendricks actually came in and did pretty good. And then the final pick, and again, now we're in the 5th round. There's really not much to say here. Enrique Cruz Jr., another offensive lineman, mostly played left tackle, also did a lot of right tackle in college. So is he a replacement for Colton McKivitz? Probably not immediately, right? you certainly wouldn't want Enrique Cruz Jr. taking starting snaps for your team in 2026. Now, again, all this stuff that I'm saying about these guys, it doesn't matter that much. Halton, Willis, Prysock, Duggar, Cruz, doesn't matter if they have great 2026s. It doesn't matter if they help the team win or not. You wouldn't expect that. That's not reasonable. But I'm looking at the top three guys. Stribling, not a bad player, a player that I came to have a certain fondness for. Romello Height, a player that I do have some appreciation for. Kaelon Black, I think he can do some stuff. I think he's a decent fit for the the Shanahan scheme. But I see a bad process here, and I'm not sure these guys are going to help the team in 2026. I'm not convinced. I think that you can make arguments that they will help some, like Stribling will probably play some. He can stretch the field. There is value there. Height can provide some sub-package edge rushing. And Black is probably going to see the field a decent amount, as long as he's the best running back after McCaffrey, which is very possible. But at the same time, I don't think that justifies the reaches made on Black and Stribling, and you could even argue there was a little bit of a reach made on Height. It just depends on how you feel about him. I was okay with where he got picked. Other people may have lower takes on him, but what are you really expecting here? And, like, just to kind of make a correlation here, the Seahawks got Jadarian Price at 32, and the 49ers got Deshaun Stribling at 33. Now, as much as Price is not my favorite player on the planet, I do believe that he will get on the field and affect the Seahawks significantly in 2026. He will probably have around 1,000 scrimmage yards, and he'll probably have close to 10 touchdowns. Is Stribling going to have anywhere near that impact on the 49ers in 2026? I seriously doubt it. That would be a bit of a surprise. That would probably require somebody to get hurt, and would probably require the Niners to be a team that throws the ball a lot because they're playing from behind or playing in shootouts. Kaelon Black. Could he be an impact player in 2026? I think it's a reasonable thought, but I'm not convinced you wouldn't be getting something similar out of a player you had to give up much less for, like Shanahan's random UDFA backs that he finds all the time. Is Kaelon Black better than them? I'm not so sure. And again, it's the reach, it's the value. So, yeah, I think this is another thing to celebrate if you're a Seahawks fan. The Niners did not do particularly well in this draft. Even most Niners fans are on board with that. And I do believe that is something to celebrate, because this is another team. They're going for it. And I don't think they move the needle very much at all, maybe not at all, with this class. See you guys later. Go Hawks.